Hey guys, the market's pretty shaky today. Hopefully everyone is doing okay. There's some sell-offs from the tariffs that have recently kicked in. We saw some sell-offs from quantum, but primarily over in AI and LLM. It was about 3.5% selling off the SPY, so there's some panic in the markets, and you got to be careful during these times. We were trading live this morning. We were looking at a bounce on SOXL, the semiconductor space, and it didn't hold, and we ended up having to manage our risk. These are the types of decisions you have to make. Do you manage risk? Do you hold? Do you buy the dip? Do you keep just watching and waiting for that entry? I think there's some companies that we're just going to continue to hold, but there are others that are looking a little less discouraging, that we have to manage some risk. And then there are some right now that are shaky, like quantum. So let's take a look at quantum and let's jump into what we are seeing right now. Stocks that make up the quantum computing market here are on the move and not in a positive direction. I'd say most of the market today, you could see a massively panic-oriented sell-off related to tariffs. The quantum computing market isn't necessarily seeing a huge dip, but you can see that it's losing some steam, and that's what we're talking about here. So as you can see, there's been these trends that are getting broken. Like this is a trend here that now is getting established, that you could see pretty clearly is a bear trend, right? So now we have this new trend that you could potentially map out. Let's see if I can draw it. This trend right here, you see that is not so hot. That's a bear trend, and it's starting with QBTS, but it's also happening even more so with some other companies like IonQ or Rigetti is seeing more of that consolidation bear market type of behavior. Now, there's no question we're in a bear type of market in general. We're not in maybe a recession market because indicators haven't fully indicated that, but we're pretty darn close. So what I wanted to break down today is what we could see in the near term. Obviously, quantum computing, the companies that have cash will be okay. We're saying yesterday that we could potentially see this QBTS sell down to this $5.50 range. I think that's quite doable, and most likely will be the level at which it will sell down to. But at the same time, we're looking at why they're selling off. Well, if you look at a company like, or a country like China, they're expected to invest 10 to 15 billion. The only legit bill, other than maybe government spending from NASA, mostly NASA is the main one that these quantum companies partner with. But if you look at this, let's see, what's it called? The Quantum Reauthorization Act. This is the only bill that I know of that's a substantial stimulus that's anticipating about close to $3 billion in influx for quantum computing companies. And the industry leaders, most likely QBTS, you got IonQ, Rigetti, some of these quantum companies that have been in the research and development phase. You could even see there NASA is mentioned. Would expect this bill to get passed. It's a 5-year, $2.7 billion. Now you might say, whoa, 5 years, $2.7 billion. That's not even close to what some of our other countries' competitors are spending on the quantum. You got, like, again, if China's spending 10 to 15 billion a year, and US is spending 2.7 billion in 5 years, that's not even close. So why would you look at this and say, well, that's not too hot? Well, you might take a step back and also say, is there other funding? The only other funding that I think could translate is most likely this Stargate's funding. And this is something to consider, right? The Stargate project is a $500 billion AI infrastructure initiative that's being funded by private companies with SoftBank, OpenAI. You got Oracle, MGX, as its initial equity funders. Now, what you need to know too is, like, if this is a $500 billion investment in global infrastructure for AI for the US, I'm saying, it is that, but it's also big companies saying, hey, we're going to invest more and let's kind of like twist it a little bit and make it, it's like for the government. That's what we're doing. It's for the government when they're already planning to invest that much money in AI anyway. So got to keep that in mind. But when you look at the AI infrastructure this year, one of the things to consider is that one of the main funders is SoftBank. Now, if you look at SoftBank, I believe SoftBank CEO is fairly bullish on quantum. They have a partnership there with Quantinum here. Quantinum, SoftBank Corp and Quantinum announced groundbreaking partnership toward practical application of quantum. So you see SoftBank, look at that. They're right there in partnerships with some quantum companies. There's that company. I believe it was maybe QEra as well. See, Google and SoftBank bet big on QEra with $230 million investment. So they're putting money. What I'm saying is, yeah, it's 500 billion for AI, but what's one of the main types of technologies that will accelerate the advent of AI and the usage for Americans as well as people in the world? What's going to be quantum. And quantum is right there paired with GPUs, with CPUs, and these are the types of technologies that make up the backbone along with software for building and growing AI as a whole. So with the 2025 boom of AI, the imagined acceleration of what could happen as a result of this $500 billion initiative is not just to fund AI. What is AI made up of? It's software, it's hardware, and in this case, looks like quantum's going to be getting some money. Now, I don't know if it's going to go directly to, for example, qubits, or it's going to go directly to IonQ, or what have you, some of the leading cutting edge companies from the US. But what we can say is that the expected influx of cash from the government, if it's going towards AI, most likely will fund some of these quantum companies, regardless if they're cutting spending in other areas, just based on what we're seeing from this initiative to put money into AI. So that's why long term, or at least near term, as far as funding, we might not see the quantum market dip quite as much as people would expect when the market's panicking and selling off. Because yes, it is something to look at. I mean, we tried to make a play this morning for semiconductors to recover after they had sold off, ended up selling off continuing. We actually had to manage risk there. That's part of the game when you're looking at the recoveries in the economies. Which sectors are most likely to hold strong? Semiconductors, I believe, will hold fairly strong, especially with Taiwan Semiconductor moving to the US. The problem is, if then they move into the US and you have Apple saying, we're going to build more in the US, we're going to build in Michigan and Austin and I think it was Nevada and California, then you have more of the big tech saying we're going to build here. And then what happens when tariffs are reduced again, and then it's easier to get labor or products or services from outside of the US? Well, then those companies in the US are like, yo, that's not something we want to be in a position for. So still, US companies are a little bit hesitant. So why is it important that we see this market sell off and watch it all the way through and see that it could sell off big and we might see even possibly into recession territory? Well, because that would indicate a true decision, a strong decision for the US to truly put manufacturing back in the US. So I think they're already starting to see some initiatives like that play out where big companies are saying, hey, we got to do this. Otherwise, we're going to spend way more money on outsourcing. And that's a factor. Now, when it comes to quantum, again, I think we're going to see more money being input regardless of economic uncertainty as the US sees AI as the race and quantum as the race that they need to continue to fund, and that they will not, I believe, will not fall behind in because of the importance of how this impacts every industry, from the military to the corporate structures to how services are delivered and AI is used. GPUs, CPUs, semiconductors, quantum, all those types of hardwares that make up the infrastructure of AI along with software will be continued to get invested in. So with this sell-off, still technically, it looks like maybe we see a short-term recovery here on Qubits and Rigetti, but that the overall direction is looking a bit down here on the near term. What you'd look for an overall direction recovery would be a break back up above this EMA, which it's struggling to break up above, that blue line. Oftentimes, if it's below, it's getting rejected. And you can see that here, the blue line acting as resistance. The technical side of things looks like we want to see this break above the blue line. That would indicate more bullish momentum. For example, since here, it's kind of struggled to get above that EMA and even crossed below the 200-day moving average, and it's just getting rejected. Now, when it's bullish, it's oftentimes going to bounce on this blue line. You see, it's holding below the trend, and it's trending upwards, that EMA. So right now, still struggling to break above, looks a little volatile. We could see some sell-offs potentially here in the near term. But again, if we see it break above this EMA, and then we start to get more, maybe closer to this 200-day moving average, then it can make sense. This push up that we saw at previous highs, to me, from the start, we're saying this is a little overextended. We love to see the growth that's happening with the Qubits and how they're building their company and becoming a commercialized quantum company. But again, there's a lot of overextension in the chart there that would make sense for why it's sold off, and that's what we see. Rigetti, maybe not selling off quite as much the past few days. It's more consolidating from left to right, but nevertheless, with that consolidation, it hasn't made those recoveries to previous highs like we saw with QBTS, where it recovered to previous highs. So some of these other quantum companies, maybe a delayed recovery, if any recovery at all. The other thing to keep in mind is the commercialization. Rigetti didn't have any big aims of commercialization that I saw recently, unless they had recently updated their site. Let's take a look. So if you guys aren't familiar, Rigetti Quantum, they got partnerships with NASA. So that's a contract that is usually ever extending. AWS, Microsoft, and Rigetti, they got their quantum computers for sale. If we go to investors here, you can see some of the recent news. No recent news this month that we haven't covered, so there's nothing indicating that they have any big commercial deals on the works. There has been some news coming out with IonQ that we could take a look at. So also another company that's experimenting with quantum. They're in that 2-qubit, the trapped ion quantum computers. Some of these partnerships are starting to develop fairly nicely, and they have some bigger companies, I'd say, that they're working with. When you go over to the company newsroom here, they haven't had a lot of articles up until, you can see, April. They got a global availability of Forte Enterprise through Amazon Bracket. So this is a quantum cloud where more people can use or test, I should say, these quantum computing use cases for IonQ. Looks like that should be interesting. When it comes to IonQ, it was selected by DARPA for Quantum Benchmarking Initiative to advance quantum computing. This program is designed to assess and validate the feasibility of developing industrial useful quantum computers ahead of conventional projections. With a demonstrated track record of innovation in real quantum applications, IonQ will help inform industry standards. Now, the development here is research through 2033, so quite the extensive research. And it looks like the CEO of IonQ said, "We are honored to be chosen for the first stage of this program under DARPA's Quantum Benchmarking Initiative." So once again, working with the government, and as you can see, they work with U.S. Air Force Research Lab, and they're essentially looking to have breakthroughs related to some of the use cases that they can use for their quantum tech in the government space. So we'll see how that goes. Right now, they are building multiple different focuses as far as applications for IonQ. So we will be seeing how they are able to develop and continually build into these quantum cloud applications, and what they're able to come out with, or what other companies are able to come out with as a result of their technology. And their quantum computers, again, used with NASA, So that's where I'm saying I think they're going to see continued usage in the coming quarters. It's just a matter of if they plug in commercially as well. So we'll be watching these closely. I think that there's definitely a sell-off continued that we might see unless we see a break above the 200-day moving average, which would require quite a bit of momentum for most of these quantum companies as they are below that 200-day moving average. But again, I think the long term most likely looks pretty good. We're just going to have to see how these tariffs and how funding for Stargate translates into quantum, and if that stimulus that continues to fuel this runway for a lot of these companies and some of them that don't have runway, how they're able to commercialize and get cash flow happening in their business. So a lot of these are multi-billion dollar companies. Their market caps are in the billions. And as we start to see quantum heat up and maybe investments increase, there is a strong chance that one of these could be a $50 billion or $100 billion company as a result of being on the frontier of quantum applications. So to say that there is a cap or that we're not going to see the market grow would be pretty insane, as IBM and Microsoft and a lot of big tech is hoping that they can be the leader, and they're putting billions of dollars into the development of the quantum sector. So we'll see if the leader is Rigetti, if it's QBTS, if it's IonQ. We'll see which companies are going to be leading the way. Is it IBM, Google, Microsoft? I think some of the smaller companies have an advantage as they can move quicker. But we'll see how it plays out. So again, comment your thoughts below what you think. And if you guys would like to watch us trade live, join us in our live session each morning. Then I would encourage you to check that second link in the description. Stockmate is normally going to have a yearly fee. Right now, you can get a one-time payment, not a subscription or anything like that. But that yearly is going to be, or the full lifetime access to our community, surround yourself with other traders and investors, is going away at its current price, and will be replaced. Its current price for the one-time payment will actually be what it will be for yearly. So again, if you would like to get lifetime access at a discounted rate, that's going away very soon. So I'd love to see you guys there in our live session tomorrow. I appreciate you all. I think there's so much potential in these companies, and that's why we cover them on a consistent basis. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.